Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this afternoon, we have Shawn, Cruz, Manager of Trader Services at TDAmeritrade, to discuss valuation in the Nasdaq-100 with stocks soaring from the March 23rd COVID-19 lows and to review some key earnings after the July 28th close. Shawn, it's great to have you with us. Welcome back to Trade Talk.
Yeah, thanks. Always great to talk to you.
All right, let's take a look at your first couple of charts here as we review valuation on the Nasdaq-100. Considering the run that it's had, this pullback here might be a bit healthy.
It can be. And I think one thing a lot of investors are trying to get a feel for is, now that we're getting earnings from some of these tech companies out there, a lot of it was more on speculation or sort of anecdotal estimates for what they thought these companies were going to report, not just for the past quarter, but also looking forward. So I think it makes sense, and now that we're getting into earnings season, that maybe they're going to let things take a little bit of a breather here and wait till we get earnings out. And then they'll reassess where they're at just in terms of pricing and valuation once we have that fresh data and we hear from some of these management teams. Because I do think what we get from management in terms of forward guidance is going to be very important for investors deciding if they want to maybe hold on to some of these names, if it's time to take some profits. I think it will just come down to one company or another. But either way, when you do start to see the market sort of consolidate at one level like we are here out of the NASDAQ, after such an incredible run, it can help it build a little bit of that base. And that's what we're looking at here, is some volume starting to accumulate at that level. And that actually can be a stabilizing factor moving forward.
All right, we have a couple of big earnings, actually three big earnings out tonight. AMD, and that'll be interesting to watch following Intel's last week.
I think so. I think it'll really come down to the forward guide. A lot of the bullish optimism, some of the bullish sentiment we've had in AMD after that Intel report was really more on the forward expectations front. When Intel announced that they were going to be delayed in getting their 7-nanometer chip out, that really sort of left AMD as the major beneficiary of that, just in terms of market share. So the stocks had a pretty solid rally. We had some analysts come out, put out some positive notes. So it really will come down to me to be that forward guidance from management when they do come out there and report. On the market right now, it looks like they're pricing in about a $5.50 range in either direction for AMD to trade in post earnings. So that'll definitely be one that I'm going to be watching.
eBay is going to be interesting considering it's a quarter with exclusively working from home for the most part.
It has been, and eBay actually has quite a few businesses that you can think of it outside of just the traditional e-commerce website. But I do think that's where a lot of investors are going to be focusing in on, and that is, how did you do on your actual eBay business itself in the marketplace? There's been some interesting things we can use to track, and we actually have one thing that, like folio data, that allows us to sort of track sentiment based off of activity on Twitter. And it does look like sentiment has been improving for eBay, just in terms of when it is mentioned, it's mentioned in more of a positive light than a negative light. So I think that is something that could set them up, if not for maybe a nice little build in revenue from that business line this past quarter, maybe they can then guide higher based off of some of the activity they saw over the second half of the quarter. So maybe it won't be fully captured in that 3-month period. We certainly saw sentiment improving over the past couple of weeks, and I think that can really help them give a little bit more of a positive outlook.
Yeah, and the last one that you'll be looking at is Starbucks. That's going to be super interesting considering what's happening with the consumer, COVID-19 shutdowns, exposure to China. There's a lot to digest in that one.
There will be, and we heard from McDonald's over the past quarter, and they sort of pointed to just a slowdown in general foot traffic, hurting some of the revenue estimates and some of the guidance. I think Starbucks may be in a similar position where they really are that place you swing through on your way to work in the morning to grab a cup of coffee. But we'll be looking for any sort of a rebound on any of their international businesses. And then also, once again, looking at some of the sentiment we're seeing in social media, it looks like you are seeing a little bit of an improvement from Starbucks. Still not as high as it once was, but definitely improving sentiment could point to, once again, more people getting out there, going back into Starbucks and maybe tweeting about finally got my Starbucks again. It's been a couple weeks or whatever that might be. But I do think, once again, forward guidance for Starbucks is going to be incredibly important for how the stock's going to trade post earnings.
All right, Shawn, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining me on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.